Good morning, everyone. Today, I will be explaining the topic of winds and its effect on the flight in the path of the aeroplane. So, it is no surprise that the biggest factor in the aircraft's movement during flight is obviously the wind. Seeing as aircraft very rarely travels in the exact same direction as the wind in order to maintain the desired course during flight, it is necessary to continuously compensate for both wind direction and wind speed. Even though an aircraft has its own means of propulsion, the speed and direction of the wind can significantly alter an aircraft in flight's progress. So first we will be seeing what are the forces that act on an airplane in flight. First, weight, that is the effect of mass on gravity, which would be applying on the force down here, weight. Then the lift, and that is mainly due to the wind which is applied on the wings, lift. And then the drag, that is the air resistance, is that when aircraft is traveling in this direction and the wind is blowing in this direction, then the drag would obviously be maximum. Is that because of as the wind travels along the surface of the plane, and the surface of the air consists of molecules, and also the surface of the plane also consists of molecules. As they brush apart each other, they generate friction, which is also called as the drag. Then thrust, which is the propulsion applied by the aircraft, which is mainly due to the engines of the aircraft. And if the wind is direction this, then it may have some effect, is that propulsion plus drag. Now we will be studying about the common types of winds. First of all, headwind. First of all, we will be studying about the headwind. So if we talk about the headwind, it is a wind blowing directly in front of the aircraft. It always increases drag. That is, if let us consider a general direction. I will be selecting the color red. Let us consider a general direction of aircraft movement is that this direction. Now, with the color of maroon, I will be indicating the wind. That is, if the wind is blowing in this direction, it is called as a headwind, and it has maximum drag on aircraft. Tailwind is the wind which directly blows to the rear of the aircraft. That is, if it is blowing in this direction, it will be known as tailwind. It will have no negative effect on the aircraft, but on the same time, during landing or takeoff, it can have a slight effect on the speed of the aircraft, which can affect many procedures. And on if we go into the three dimension, and if the aircraft is moving like this, and if the wind is going like this, then it will be known as the crosswind. In general, we can say that any other wind other than headwind or tailwind can be known as the crosswind. Now, moving on, what factor does a wind affect on the performance of the aircraft? Uh, First of all, moving on to the headwinds. So are headwinds good for the aircraft takeoff? So as we know, headwinds are directly in the opposite direction of the aircraft. So the aircraft would have to apply more force here to overcome the forces of wind, and at the same time cause an acceleration of A so that it could increase its velocity. Headwind helps in increasing lift, due to which lower ground speed and a shorter runway distance is needed for the aircraft to get airborne. And also landing into the similar winds, less runway and ground speed is lower at touchdown. So hence headwinds are more beneficial to the aircraft during landing and takeoff. Landing and crosswinds, that is a wind blowing in this direction or this directions, mm, are more challenging and at times could even mean impossible for the aircraft to land in such a condition. Now moving on to the wind and weather conditions, which are considered pre-flight. While planning is an important part of any flight, every pilot takes into consideration weather conditions and winds when crossing a suitable flight path or when planning a flight. Tailwinds are usually useful to travel faster and save fuel on a less power is needed to drive. So let us consider a globe and let us consider a country A and a country B. So, um, like the aircraft has to go from here to here. So, if the wind is blowing in this direction, then in the long run, it would be very useful for the aircraft to save fuel. But at the same time, it would be challenging for the aircraft to landing and takeoff. While if the wind is blowing in this direction, we can already conclude that it would be difficult for the aircraft to travel long distances, but it could also be useful for the aircraft in landing and takeoff. Now moving on to, do strong winds affect flight path? Gusts of winds that change direction quickly and abruptly are one of the most dangerous wind conditions, both in flight and on takeoff and landing. A sudden change in headwind or tailwind, causing rapid changes in lift to the aircraft, also known as wind shear, is one of the worst wind effects to experience. However, most of the pilots are trained to deal with this kind of situation. Sometimes a difficult wind condition can cause some aviation accidents, but most of the time there are other factors involved. Pilots are well trained in controlling the aircraft. Now, moving on to the condition, how we could include this in a game. Like, for example, mm, uh, mm, for example, uh, if there is a game object of plane which is taking off on a runway, and now if the programmer applies a wind from here, then for the gamer, or we can say the player, it would be easy for the takeoff as it would generate more lift. But at the same time, if the programmer has to make a more challenging level, then he could plan a headwind or a gust of winds that change direction at a certain intervals of time. So for the player, it is more difficult to control the path. Thank you. That is all my explanation for the topic. Hope you liked it.